All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Career Transitions After 50, with presenter Hallie Crawford. My name is Rebecca Luber, and I'm the Director of Career and Business Engagement with the University of Minnesota Alumni Association. Welcome to today's webinar. We want to thank our members of the Alumni Association and our donors for making our alumni webinar series possible. Thank you so much for your support. There are other webinars that you might be interested in as well. These are just a few. To check out more of these, feel free to go to our website, umnalumni.org/virtual. And if you're listening in, there's also another option to listen by phone. Feel free to dial the number on your screen and then enter the webinar ID, and then you can listen by phone. All right, so today's presenter, Hallie Crawford, has been a certified career coach and national career expert for 19 years. Her company, HallieCrawford.com, and team of coaches have helped thousands of people worldwide identify and transition into their dream career, effectively navigate their job search, and enhance their performance at work. Hallie is regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including US News, Forbes.com, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, and Fox Business News. Welcome, Hallie.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. Really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. We are excited to get started with you. I'm going to share my screen here. And Rebecca, help me make sure that I get it right. Does everything look okay there?
Yes, you are sharing your screen.
Okay, awesome. There are different options with Zoom, and I'm sure as all of you have probably discovered, because so many of us are using Zoom, given we're working from home and everything is remote, that they keep doing different updates. So we have to stay on top of which buttons are which and everything else. So I'm excited to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for your time, especially during what is obviously a very unsettling time for so many of us. We are going to be talking today about career transitions after 50 and how to navigate that as effectively as we possibly can. So as Rebecca said, I'm Hallie Crawford. I am a certified career coach, speaker, and author, and I actually have been coaching and training for just over 19 years now. I started my business when I was in my late 20s, and I know some of you are probably thinking, she sounds like she's 12. How is that possible? I'm actually pushing 50. I am turned 47 this year. And this is our website. So one of the things I wanted to just share with you all first is the tips and advice that I'm going to give you today are suggestions and advice that we use with all of our clients and have been using for the past 19 years. I wanted to let you know that especially during this time, we know that there will probably be a lot of questions about, what do I do during this time now that everything is online and remote and all of that. And we will have a Q&A session at the end, okay, where I will answer questions. So you can go ahead and enter those in the Q&A function there. But I did want to let you all know that we are trying to, as much as possible, help people during this uncertain time, because we know that it's unsettling for all of us. And so on our career blog up here at the top, if you take a look here at the top right, we are posting a lot more content than we usually do that is unique and specific to dealing with a job search or career transition during this kind of strange, odd time. So please feel free to check out our career blog on our website. I also would encourage you all to link up and connect with me on LinkedIn as well, because we post a lot of content there too. And as I said, again, we're just trying to help people as much as possible because we know these are very uncertain, unsettling times. And we are going to tailor our content towards your unique situation and what's going on for you. So here's our basic agenda. If you take a look at this next slide, we are going to talk today about, in terms of your career transition, one of the things that we find it's most helpful for people to do to identify what they want to be doing next and what would be the right fit for them in the long run for the next, however many years for you, is to define what's going to be most fulfilling and rewarding and identify what your career values are. we're going to talk today as part of that about our ideal career model, because this will help you not just identify what you want and what would work for you, but also help you identify what the practical, tangible elements are that you need to consider during this time in your life. And finally, it's also going to help give you some ideas about how to brand and sell yourself, the things that you need to be thinking about in order to promote yourself to prospective employers. And then finally, our third agenda item or step is talk about how to expand your thinking, brainstorm what different options could be out there for you at this time in your life. And we have a very specific 4-step process that we use or give to our clients to help them brainstorm and identify, okay, what's out there and what's feasible and possible. And as I said, we are going to be tailoring this content to this age group, obviously, as we said earlier. And then also, I will be kind of addressing what's going on during this coronavirus crisis as well, and some adjustments you may need to make to your job search. But feel free to ask about those things in the Q&A portion as well. You will get a copy of the recording, as Rebecca said, after this presentation today. If you would like a copy of our PowerPoint slides, please feel free to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. That's the best email address to reach us to get a copy of those. We would be happy to share those with you. So let's dive right into the content. Why is it important to think about career transition at this time specifically in your life, and what might be the same as for other people of different ages, and what might be a little bit different? So why this is important and how it is a little bit different for people over 50 is that, understandably, professionals over 50 may have different fears or concerns about making this transition and their job search in general. They could be concerned about age discrimination, concerns about financial stability, making sure that, figuring out what the changing work environment is and how things are different, and understanding how and where do I fit in. There was a client that one of our coaches was working with a couple of months ago, and actually it was several months ago, well before the COVID crisis, but he was telling us, I got this job and there's a lot of elements and things that I like about it, but there's a bunch of really young people here and they think it's okay to shoot Nerf guns off in the office all day long. And I'm not really sure that this is going to work for me. So we talked to him about how to make a transition into something else. So whether it's Nerf guns or, something completely different, we understand that you need to, feel like, okay, where and how do I fit in, and how do I make sure that I can make that transition effectively? The good news is, and it's why we're here today, obviously, is that you can find the right fit. We want to give you the specific steps to make that happen. So let's talk first about defining fulfillment. And I will explain to you in just a couple of moments why we feel this is such an important kind of first step here. So we have all of our clients, regardless of their age, by the way, define what would be most rewarding to them first. Because we have found that if people look at that right away out of the box and then start to identify, okay, what their strengths are and their talents and skills, and how does their past experience play into what they should be doing next, if they define what's going to be most rewarding to them and define that fulfillment first, they will get much closer to something that is a really good overall big picture fit for them than they would have otherwise. Because what we have found is that when you start to think about what's fulfilling to you, is it starts to bleed over and impact your strengths, the right work environment for you, and everything else. So fulfillment impacts every other piece of our ideal career model that I'll show you in just a moment. So one of the things we want you to think about, and go ahead and get out your pen and start writing down some of these action items if you would, is we want you to start to think about, okay, what is rewarding for me right now at this point in my life? And I realize that we need to think about compensation and everything else, but we want you to start with doing this kind of big picture brainstorming, if you will, because that will help you cast your net a lot wider at the beginning to see what else is out there, career or job-wise, that you may not have known existed in the first place. And if you just start with, okay, what am I good at and what's my past experience, you're going to keep yourself in a box and you're going to limit your possible opportunities. So we want you to think about what's rewarding to you now, and I'll explain to you why this mermaid is on the slide here in a second. So one of the ways to start to do this as part of defining what's going to be rewarding and fulfilling is to dig underneath and think about what are some of your hobbies and your interests, even outside of your work life at this point in time in your life. And what are some common themes underneath those? Is it something about being creative? Is it something about doing something with your hands, or is it working with numbers, or is it planning and like project management, that kind of thing? Because when you dig underneath things that are personally rewarding for you, that can help you start to identify what some of your possible values are and give you some ideas about jobs that you could look at. The other thing that you can do, step number 2 here, is to look to your earlier times in your career. Why did you get into the career path that you have chosen up until this point? What was appealing to you at the beginning about it? What was the passion or, draw at the beginning? Because sometimes over time, throughout the course of our careers, and this has happened to me as well, is we start to lose sight of that passion because we move up and we're not, doing that thing that we really enjoyed in the first place. Or maybe it's that our career trajectory has changed so much that, it's completely changed from where we started. So look to your earlier career and think about, okay, what was appealing for me at that time? Quick example using this image on the slide here. So the reason why there's a mermaid from Weeki Wachee on the slide is because I actually grew up in Florida, and I used to go to Weeki Wachee all the time with my parents when I was a kid. And I actually wanted to be a mermaid when I grew up. I thought that was the coolest thing going, right? And obviously that's not the most practical, realistic thing for me to do, not what I do today. And there's a lot of elements about it that obviously wouldn't be a fit for me. However, when I look back and thought about, what was rewarding about that to me, it started to give me clues to what some of my personal and therefore professional values were. It was the beauty and creativity. I love giving presentations like this. I love working on PowerPoint slides. And as a business owner, a small business owner, I love working on my marketing and branding of our organization and all of that. There's that creative element that was present there when I was a kid. The other piece of it, why I was interested in being a mermaid, was there's that element of risk, and risk is actually one of my personal and career values as well. I love horseback riding and snow skiing, like more risky kind of personal activities. And I actually love the risk of being a business owner. That actually is kind of gets me jazzed, and I like that challenge. So when you think about these things, even your childhood dreams, as in the example that I'm giving you now, there may be some elements of things that point you to what your career or personal values are, so that you can start to think about, okay, what would I like to incorporate in my career now? The reason why we talk about fulfillment, piggybacking on what I was saying earlier, is if you take a look at this career model. So this is our copyrighted career model that I've developed over doing this for the past 19 years. And pretty early on in my coaching career, I realized I needed to have a framework and some tools to use with clients that would help kind of structure the work that we did together. So all of our coaches use this model today. If you look at the bottom right of the screen here in the slide, fulfillment is the first thing we have them define. Then we have them look at enjoyment, strengths, et cetera, et cetera. Because again, what we have found is that clients tend to get the most or the majority of their career ideas from thinking about what would be rewarding and fulfilling to them first. That helps them think really broadly outside the box and come up with a lot more career ideas than if we had started with, education or experience. We overlay those in over time to narrow down their ideas, but we do want you to think about this fulfillment piece right out of the box first, okay? Another way that you can start to define fulfillment, and then we'll go to our second step here in just a moment and talk more about the ideal career model. I'll go into that in depth for you. Another way to help you define fulfillment is to journal and write for about 10 minutes about how you define success at this point in your life. What does success mean to you? Is it about a sense of accomplishment, but also maybe giving back to your community? Is it about, I want to impact other people in this certain way, that I feel like I'm improving their work life in some way, or their personal health in some way, whatever it is. Think about the impact that you want to have on others, because that can help you start to think about what that next career transition should be. The second thing that you can do is to identify your interests, kind of like we talked about it before, and what are things that when you do either in your work life or personal life that you tend to lose track of time because you're just in the flow and you're enjoying it so much. The third step that you can take is to identify and think about what would an ideal day at work look like for you now at this point in your life. Are you looking for something that is remote work or part-time or with a flexible schedule, okay? Or do you want to go into an office after all of this blows over so you can have that camaraderie with people? So think about what qualities you would want to have in that ideal day at work. And we've said several things so far about your career values, so I wanted to talk about that for just a moment, and then we'll launch our first poll here in just a second here. So the way that we have our clients identify what their career values are is by identifying and thinking about what we call a peak experience exercise. A peak experience can be a moment in time. It could be a period of time. It doesn't matter. We want you to think of something, though, by the way, everyone, that was a personal peak experience. A trip to Italy, for example. Or we had one client say when he was the editor of his high school yearbook, that was a peak moment or a period of time for him. So think of this peak experience and start to write down, and ideally tell someone else about it because they can help kind of reflect back what the values are that they hear. But think about and tell the other person what was cool about it for you. So with your peak experience, remember, we aren't looking for just the details of, oh, I was with my friend Joe or Susan and, we were at this place and we were eating this kind of food or whatever. Think and talk about what was really cool about it for you and rewarding and memorable. Once you start to write those things out, it's fantastically cool, I have found, how you can start to pick out what some of your values are. And when you share it with a friend, family member, career coach, whatever, they can start to pick out what those possible values are. And then you can brainstorm ideas from there. Quick example, if you take the same two people, trip to Italy is their same peak experience. One person might talk about the planning, how much time they wanted to spend in each spot, how would they get to each location, where would they stay, what kind of food would they be eating, et cetera, et cetera. And a whole nother person, same peak experience of trip to Italy, let's say, might say something completely different. It was about the food and the beauty and the creativity, and they wanted to go visit art museums, that kind of thing. Two completely different sets of values there. One is about planning, organizing, maybe creating an experience for someone. And the other one could be about, designing something beautiful, like a graphic designer for other people. So that gives you an example of how you can start to think about what your possible values might be based on this peak experience, okay? So Rebecca, if we could go ahead and launch our first poll, that would be fantastic. We wanted to find out from you all, how many of you on the call today happen to know what your career values are? And if you do, that's fantastic. This can give you some additional ideas. And by the way, we do have our clients reevaluate their values at least annually, maybe even every 6 months, because our values can change over time, especially given our life circumstance and situation, as well as our age. When I had my son, he's 12 now, but before I had my son, honestly, the value of family was not high up on my list. It's not that I didn't like my family, it just wasn't one of my top most important values. But after he was born, that bumped up, as you can imagine, much higher. So your values can shift around and change over time. So we've got the results. Thank you for sharing these, Rebecca. That's perfect. So 56% say they do know their career values. Awesome. And 44% say they don't. So for those 44%, make sure that you complete this exercise. And for those 56%, please consider reevaluating at this point in your life, okay, what do I want next? Are my values the same as they were before, or have they changed a little bit? Sometimes your values may not change dramatically on the surface, everyone, but the way that you honor them or the way that you define them may have changed. So that's why it's important to take a look at these again, just in case. Okay, great. So I'm going to close out the poll results, at least on my end. So let's take a look at our second step here on this next slide here. I was trying to say slide and step at the same time there. And this is to review our ideal career model. And there's two reasons for this, as I referenced before. So the two reasons we want you to take a look at our career model is number one, to help you brainstorm some different options that you could look at based on not just what's rewarding for you, but based on the other elements of things that you bring to the table, okay? And then the other reason why it's helpful to do this is to also start to understand how you brand yourself and sell yourself during a job search. So let me see if I can get my cursor to sneak over here. Okay, great. So we talked about fulfillment already. We want you to start with that first so you identify your values. And by the way, when you're talking with someone, in a job interview, for example, or even networking, and you're concerned about either that age bias or being overqualified for a potential job, discussing with them and letting them know what your values are can actually be a way to help kind of work around those things, especially the being overqualified. So if you are concerned that they might wonder, gosh, why does this person want this job now? Are they going to stay challenged and rewarded and fulfilled because they're so overqualified? Referencing your values at this point is a great way to help allay those fears on the part of the prospective employer, okay? So we do encourage you to not just know your values, but communicate those regularly. The next piece that we want you to think about in order to brainstorm possible ideas is to think about, okay, what are your most enjoyable tasks that you've performed at work, but also outside of work as well? This is the enjoyment piece. So what are the tasks that you most want to perform? Something to think about with this one, just by the way, is to think about your career as a pie, if you will. We're all going to have a bunch of different tasks that we perform, but we want to find out, okay, what's my main role? Like, so for me, for example, it would be career coach, right? But I get to perform a lot of other kind of ancillary tasks that are the icing on the cake for me that are still really enjoyable and fulfilling to me. Marketing, like I said before, writing and editing articles. Guess what? I had a job when I lived in Chicago for about 8 years before moving to Atlanta. I had a job in marketing and communications though, and I absolutely hated it. It wasn't the right fit because marketing and communications and the writing need to be a piece of what I do, not the main thing. So be careful when you're filling out this enjoyment section of the model and make sure that you're qualifying or clarifying, okay, what are the tasks I want to perform the majority of the time? When you're starting to think about not just what you would be good at and what the right next step is, but also branding yourself, we would highly recommend you need to look at your strengths. We use with our clients or recommend to them the Strengths Finder assessment. We find that's one of the easier assessments to use and for people to digest without needing someone who's certified to kind of interpret the answers. If you take the Strengths Finder assessment, the website, by the way, is strengthsfinder.com. And there are two reasons why we like this assessment a lot. Number one is it gives you, just with those top 5 strengths, it's probably like $25, give or take, to take the assessment. It's very affordable and you get a lot of content for that amount. Just do your top 5 strengths and it's affordable, quick, and easy. The second reason why we really like it though is because with that list of strengths, you get a very detailed description, if you will, not just analysis, but description of what that strength means that you can then use when you're networking with people as well as when you're on an interview, okay? You can start to describe what those strengths are using that language. We have had clients, by the way, go into an interview with what we call a brag book, and it's a quick bound, and yes, this is not an old school thing to do. It is still good today to do. Quick bound little booklet that you can get printed, virtually, get it delivered to you, whatever. But they will put and list actually their strengths either on their resume or have their Strengths Finder results in that interview booklet that they can take, okay? And in these days when we're doing things virtually, you can just send that to them like as a PDF file instead, okay? The next piece that we want you to look at is your past experience, to brainstorm other alternative ideas, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, how to do this online so that you're really starting to see what's out there and identifying some opportunities. But brainstorm and look at past experience that you've enjoyed and that also you haven't enjoyed and what you might want to have instead. And as part of this though, go through and go through your resume line by line and write down what each of these, each of the bullet points means that you're qualified for in terms of that experience, okay? Literally print out your resume and go line by line, handwriting it or typing it out, whatever's best for you, to really get grounded in, okay, what is my past experience and what are the possible jobs I could consider and how do I need to sell myself on this experience as well? Look at your past education. Even though it was a long time ago, it was for me, my Vanderbilt was my undergraduate degree and then master's degree from the University of Illinois. That was a long time ago. I graduated in 95 from Vanderbilt. But still, when I look back at past education, there are themes in terms of what I was interested in, even at undergrad, that play forward or that are still important to me today as part of my values. So looking at your education, everyone, will give you some possible career ideas, or could give you some career ideas if you think back to classes that you enjoyed and what you may want to get back to at this point in your life. But also any certifications that you've obtained since then, any classes that you've taken, you want to list those on your resume if they are relevant for the jobs that you're applying for. The next 3 pieces we want you to take a look at is your personality type and how that can sell you for the jobs that you're looking at, but it will also help you determine what the right role is for you. Are you more introverted or extroverted? Are you more of a leader or more of a worker bee, kind of behind the scenes? So think about what your personality type is as well in terms of branding yourself so that you can promote yourself in the right way and market yourself effectively on your resume and in interviews, but also to be thinking about the right fit, role-wise and work environment and culture-wise too. Then we take a look at work environment. These two interplay enormously. What is the right fit for you at this point? Do you not want to be at a startup because that's just going to be, too little structure for you? It's not the right place for you because you want to work at a larger organization in order to have a bigger impact. Whatever it is, you need to think about the work environment. That's critically important at any stage of your life. And also, finally, you obviously need to think about compensation. That's a critical piece to considering, okay, what needs to be next and what are my salary requirements at this stage in my life and based on what's going on for all of us during the coronavirus crisis. So before we get to the career brainstorming in our 3rd step, use this model. What I would encourage you all to do is print out a copy of this model to start to help you brainstorm your ideas. If you're in that place where I need to figure out, okay, what the right next step is because I'm not sure of my direction, and use this as a literal checklist to say, okay, what's important to me in each of these boxes. And once you start to write all of that out, you'll see themes between everything that you're saying. And those themes are the things that you want to start to pick up on. And for those of you that do know your direction, but need to work now on job search and branding yourself, you want to pay special attention to your career values, like we said, but also your strengths, your education, your experience, and your personality type. Personality type, a lot of times, can be those soft skills that we all have, whether it's strong work ethic, ability to just kind of manage change or conflict or crises effectively. Those soft skills are things that you want to promote for yourselves as well. One of our clients that we were working with this week, he has been in job search mode even before all of this stuff happened. And we were talking with him about right away, right now, putting on his resume how he has managed this crisis with his team. He works for Cardinal Health. He actually works remotely because he lives in Atlanta. But right away, we were coming up with language to say, okay, this is what I've done during this coronavirus crisis. This is how, I can demonstrate that I'm a very strong leader, not just in my organization, but of my teams, because within 4 days, his team was ready to go remotely and had everything in place operationally that they need to happen. And he manages a very large team. He's very high up there, senior level in their operations department for one of their specific healthcare arms, okay? So keep all of this stuff in mind that we're talking about specifically for the situation that we're in today. All right, so step number 3 is to do your career brainstorming. And this is for everyone who needs to identify or wants to identify what the right next step is. But also, by the way, this will help you find these job opportunities too, even if you know your direction. The tough part that we have found with our clients about career brainstorming is there's so many different things to consider to find the right fit, just like we showed you on the career model. Those are the things you need to consider to know the right next step. And there's also no website that's out there with one comprehensive list. I sometimes feel like people come to us and they think we have some magic thing behind the curtain or a magic wand. Unfortunately, we don't, but I'm going to show you the closest thing that we do in terms of our career brainstorming here as well. And we understand that this, finding out and identifying what is out there and what's possible for you, we do understand that this can feel very overwhelming. So that's why we break it down into these 4 steps. So our basic 4 steps that we want you to go through and walk through, by the way, very methodically, everyone, step by step, not going different, between all of them, go step by step this way, is you identify keywords that you want to search on first. We then want you to look at general search sites like Google, Bing, whatever you use, to start to look at what's out there and what's feasible and possible for you. Then we want you to look at career brainstorming sites, and we'll show you what some of those are in just a moment. And then finally, we want you to narrow down your ideas by looking at job boards as well. So this 4-step process is something, by the way, that it's not like you do it in an hour and you're done. This takes time. You need to set aside for yourself the next couple of weeks, for example, to really feel like you're doing a thorough job. You can still apply for jobs during that time. It's not like you have to wait until then. But to do a really thorough job and give this the time that it requires, you want to give yourself a couple of weeks to work through this. Just by the way, if you start going through this and you feel like you need some additional help, I did want to let you all know that we're happy to do a free career strategy session with anyone that's attended today or even listening in later on. If you'd like to set that up, it would be directly with me, and you would email admin@halliecrawford.com to get that set up, and we can talk about what next steps you need to be taking for whatever your particular situation is, okay? So happy to set that up with you all. Just don't hesitate to email us. So in terms of the career brainstorming, we have several slides for this one, and then we'll get to the Q&A here in just a moment. We want you to stay organized and get organized before you even dive into this, because if you start out being disorganized, you're going to end up all over the place and waste your time. So we want you to have an Excel spreadsheet to track the relevant keywords that are going to make the most sense for your past experience, what you'd be qualified for, as well as what would be interesting to you and what your strengths are. This will help you track your career ideas that you're coming up with and the job descriptions that you're finding over time that look appealing to you. You want to also track the web pages that you want to revisit later on to read in greater depth. You want to track and pay attention to the job requirements that you're seeing out there that you may need to brush up on, and also what the salary requirements are for you. And also, this Excel spreadsheet is really important for tracking your networking progress. So let's go ahead and launch the second poll here, Rebecca, if we could. We're curious how effective your networking skills are. If you could fill this out for us, that would be great. And here's the deal, everyone. At any age, and still in the age of LinkedIn and online networking and everything that we're going through now, networking still is the best way to get a job. The statistics show that between 60 and 70% of people, the way that they land or secure a job is through networking. Okay, so even though networking has moved online, and by the way, we do encourage you to leverage your LinkedIn alumni network through the University of Minnesota. Huge resource there. We want you to join that and start leveraging that network there, as well as consider joining or participating more in LinkedIn groups, because that's all we've got right now for networking, since we're not doing as much, if any, in person. So check out LinkedIn groups as well for this, okay? So in terms of effectiveness, we've got good 46%. Right in the middle there, that makes sense. And really close, the poor though, 45. So we're kind of right on the edge there, actually. So keep in mind that as we're talking today, networking is still really critical. And what we need you to start doing, everyone, is leveraging LinkedIn more and more, especially during this time until things start to open up a little bit more. You can look at industry-specific associations for networking opportunities or possibilities. They may be doing some online events, for example, or you may just be able to network with those people one-on-one by conducting those informational interviews with them. We do, by the way, have a job search worksheet that we would be happy to share with you. Don't hesitate to email us, admin@halliecrawford.com, the same thing. But this job search worksheet is already pre-filled out for you. so that you are ready to go. You've got your job search organized. It has different tabs set up in it and everything that we want you to be tracking and paying attention to over time. So happy to share that with you. That is the tool that we use with our clients all the time. Okay, quick overview of the sites that we want you to be looking at. Like we talked about earlier, we start with the general search sites like Google, career sites, and then job boards. So here are a couple of the brainstorming tools that we want to share with you. So we want you to plug your keywords in into just Google and Bing and that kind of thing, just to see what articles are out there, or what job openings come up, or even if you find out about industry-specific associations. Here are some specific websites, though, if you take a look on this slide, that will help you brainstorm different possible ideas for you, especially given the age range that we're in. So Second Act Careers is great. onetcenter.org is a really good career brainstorming website, as well as myplan.com. If you plug in certain strengths, past experience, et cetera, into here, like data analysis, project management, whatever it is, it's going to spit out to you, here are some possible jobs that would utilize that strength or skill, okay? Another one is My Skills, myfuture.org, et cetera, you can read those on the slide here. The job boards that we like people to look at, by the way, that I wanted to reference today, are job boards like Indeed and Glassdoor. We really like Glassdoor a lot. We do also like the job board on LinkedIn as well. But take a look at flexjobs.com and remote.co as well. Those are sister sites. Flexjobs.com is great. They do have a membership fee. They reduce their fee during this time to help people out. It's very affordable. Even if you sign up for a month, that will show you what some part-time jobs are, flexible work schedule, and remote working jobs are as well. And then you might want to look at industry-specific sites as well for people who are looking at specific industries like marketing, communications, whatever it is. Idealist.org on the slide here is just one example. That's a great website for people who are looking to work at like a nonprofit or a foundation, something like that. Just gives you an example of industry specific, okay? So the career brainstorming or job identification process is this. Step one, you want to write down what your keywords are and identify what they are. Based on your interests, your skill set, your strengths. It could be something like data analysis, event planning, whatever it is that comes out of you working on that ideal career model first, okay? So step one is we want you to make a really solid list of relevant keywords first. And take a few minutes to do that, because you may come up with some additional ones based on really giving it that time. Use a website like synonym.com to come up with synonyms too that may be more relevant for your industry. Step two is we want you to look at the general search sites like Google, et cetera, like we said before. This helps you cast a wider net. So for example, you might look at careers in data analysis or jobs in education based on what some of your interests or past experience is. But doing this Google search will help you brainstorm other ideas that you may not have thought of before, because these keywords will pull up some of these job opportunities, okay? Step three is to look at the brainstorming sites. Those are the ones we referenced earlier: Second Act Careers, Flex Jobs, etc. Keywords plugged into these sites will help you narrow down your ideas or expand your reach a little bit more, and also can begin to help you make it real, so to speak, because some of these sites will actually show you what the requirements are as well as what the salary ranges are too. So it can help you make things more tangible. And then finally, we do want you to look at step four, which is the job search boards. Or the jobs boards, sorry. So the deal is, think of this process, everyone, as kind of like a funnel, where you want to start big with the larger sites and narrow things down as you go over time. But what you'll notice is when you search on job boards like ZipRecruiter or Indeed or Glassdoor, for example, that when you plug in those keywords, you'll start to see different jobs that leverage or utilize the strengths or experience that you have that you may not have thought of before, because they're not just looking at the job titles, they're also pulling up information from the actual job description as well. So that is our four-step career kind of brainstorming or job identification process that we want you to go through. And then our final step, obviously, once you start to see what's out there and you're ready to start applying for jobs, is we want you to update your resume and your LinkedIn profile. And LinkedIn your search. So a couple of things that we wanted to share with you about your resume and LinkedIn, and then we'll get to Q&A here in just a moment, is we want you to update your resume and your LinkedIn profile so that it looks current and up to date. And what this means is a couple things on this slide here. So your cover letter, your resume, and your LinkedIn should communicate your brand and be consistent across all three of those, okay? So a couple of tips here. Resumes look pretty these days. They're usually much fancier than they used to be. They're not just black and white. People will use color. They'll use a black or a blue background header, for example, and different shading and formatting. So make your resume look modern and up to date so that it stands out from the crowd. You want to also check the formatting throughout so that you maintain consistency and make use of that white space that's on there. Don't make it so cumbersome and dense that when someone sees it, they're like, oh, I don't want to read this, okay? Make sure that you SEO your resume and include keywords. We have a resume and LinkedIn expert on our team. This is what she does all day long. We have several very affordable LinkedIn and resume packages to help people with this piece so that you can get by those ATS scanners. You want to make sure that you mention marketable results. So under each of your past experiences, under your job descriptions, don't just have this is, a list of tasks and this is what I did. Make sure that you have it be result oriented. So what happened as a result of you doing this work? Was it successful? Provide or include numbers and quantifiable results as much as you can. We know that you can't all the time, but spit something out as much as you possibly can, okay? And include what those results are. So for example, if we had a client who reorganized, was the office manager for a dentist's office, let's say, and they reorganized the office to increase the efficiency of check-in and therefore enable them to be able to see more clients during the course of any given day. We would want them to literally say that on their resume. Say, reorganized and redesigned, front office space to increase effective check-in, resulting in, X percentage of clients seen per day, which increases their revenue, right? So whatever it is, even if you don't have those quantifiable results, write something down and say what the result was. And then finally, and then we'll go ahead and launch our third and last poll here, if we could, Rebecca, that would be great. How many people know how to leverage LinkedIn effectively for networking? You want to have a professional profile, a summary at the top of your resume objective. Like those, we want you to have a profile that sells you for that specific job. So this should be a professional profile that brands you effectively and talks about not just your past experience, but your soft skills as well and your core areas of expertise. So we're doing our LinkedIn poll here. And I just wanted to make a couple quick notes here too. Okay, good. So the majority of people are feeling like they don't leverage it effectively, which totally understand. That's why we're here. Okay, good. So 76% say no, 24% say yes. I'm going to just close this out. Thank you for participating in that and for sharing it, Rebecca. That's perfect. So LinkedIn is a big deal during this time. LinkedIn groups, like we said, leverage your alumni association. Come up with a good kind of informational interview standard template that you will use when you're reaching out to people and want to connect with them, to do an informational interview with them for 10 or 20 minutes in the next couple of weeks. We have found, so a couple things, let me say a couple things about COVID, and then we'll get to our action steps and our Q&A portion. So I want you all to know that we found that our clients are still getting jobs. We had a client last week that had 2 interviews, a client the week before that got a job offer, and the week before that as well. They're all contacted or being contacted by recruiters, and everyone has been pleasantly surprised by the amount of organizations and companies that are still hiring. That is not to say that we don't understand that things are tough for people. We totally get that. But I just wanted to give you kind of a bright spot in all of this, that there are industries and companies that are still hiring. We all want to get back to normal as soon as possible. So people are trying to do that as quickly as we possibly can, okay? So try to stay positive. To deal with the possible age bias issue, which we realize people are concerned about, delete any experience on your resume and on LinkedIn that is over 10 years old, especially if it's not relevant. Just take it away. You can remove your graduation dates to help with this. Highlight in your professional profile at the top of your resume, like we said just a moment ago, why your experience and expertise is an asset. Do you have a lot of networking connections? Are you great at building and maintaining relationships because of your years of experience? Demonstrate your knowledge of technology. Put up a video on LinkedIn of yourself. And if you're not comfortable doing that, put up some articles or write some articles and post them on LinkedIn. Share some articles. Show them that you know what you're doing with technology. And absolutely do put a headshot on LinkedIn. It is a no-brainer, but make it look youthful. That doesn't mean go color your hair or something necessarily, although you could do that. But wear something that's a little bit more youthful and kind of cutting edge to demonstrate that, hey, I can fit in if you are concerned about this age bias. Okay, let's go ahead and start moving towards our Q&A portion. But one of the first things I wanted you all to do, go ahead and enter in your questions in the Q&A box on Zoom here so that we can answer them for you. But we also want you to choose one action step that you will take for this next week to make this real, what we've talked about today. It could be, I need to get a headshot for LinkedIn. You can have a family member, one of your kids, do it for you on their phone. As long as it looks professional, you've got a clean background. We don't think that you always have to hire a professional photographer. That would be great, but not always feasible. It could be that, hey, I want to go through the career model so I can brainstorm what options are out there for me. Whatever it is, go ahead and get out your pen and paper, please, and write down one action step that you will take in the next week. Happy to help you. Remember that we have that offer out there for the free strategy session. Happy to do that with you. admin@halliecrawford.com to just go ahead and set that up with us. And then one of the final thoughts that I wanted to say as my part of the presentation before we get to the Q&A is that I know some of the things, and even, just being at this age and at this time where we're at with the economy and everything else, some of these action steps, it just may feel like, gosh, this is a risk and it feels scary. Remember that the greatest risk in life is not taking one. This is the quote that I always like to end my webinars with, because it's the thing that propels me to do those things that don't feel as comfortable. If I don't want to reach out to someone cold and ask them to talk with me, or I don't feel like, looking like I don't know what I'm doing, or whatever it is, if any of these action items feel like a risk for you, please know that we totally get it. And we totally get that the times these days can feel really scary. Without risk, remember, there's no reward. Be persistent and follow up with people. Put yourself out there. The more you do that in terms of networking, the more likely it is that you will get a job faster. Just keep that in mind too. So Rebecca, if we could do the Q&A, that would be great. I've got my pen here in case I need to write anything down as you're reading them out to me. That would be fantastic.
Yes, and it looks like we're getting a ton of questions in the Q&A box, so I'll do my best to kind of summarize some of them and kind of combine some themes as we're kind of going through. But I do have some questions that I picked up earlier on in today's webinar. And so the first question I have is, the application process in 2020 is substantially electronic. I would like to make direct or personal connection with hiring managers and internal recruiters. What do you suggest in terms of making those connections despite the electronic barriers?
Yep. Find them on LinkedIn if you can. Find a second connection ideally, or someone through your alumni association that maybe works at that organization that could make an introduction in some way, shape, or form. So try to find a warm lead, but then go look for them on LinkedIn. And if you have to introduce yourself cold, LinkedIn is the best way to do it. I would absolutely do that. Good question.
Great. It looks like we're getting a lot of questions regarding removing experiences after 10 years from our resume, from our LinkedIn, and then your thoughts on whether they should include things that are still relevant maybe to what they're applying for, or maybe things that are like a hook, like they worked at NASA or something like that.
Yep.
Your thoughts there?
Yeah, great clarifying question about that. So the general rule of thumb is if it is older than 10, yeah, take it off. However, if it would be relevant or it's a good hook, leave it there. The thing that you have to pay attention to on your resume in particular, but LinkedIn as well, is if you're taking out some other pieces, you don't want to look like you have had a gap in your experience. So if you are going to leave something that's older, what you could do is you could just have on LinkedIn or even on your resume, just from this time to this time, I worked at these 3 places, and just list those with job titles, and that's it. So you're not taking up the space, but you're also not just showing that, oh, there's this huge gap in employment. So yes, do leave them if they would be highly relevant or it's a good hook.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So how much time do you recommend spending searching for jobs on the job boards each week? What does that look like?
Yeah, because job boards are the lowest rate of return, but we still need to do them because you never know, right? And also job boards kind of show us what's out there. So I would recommend having a daily and weekly schedule and goals for yourselves. So for example, you may say each day I want to spend at least 4 hours total on my job search, and maybe one of those hours is on job boards. I honestly wouldn't spend like 5 hours on a job board. It's not the right way to spend your time. So maybe it's an hour a day, give or take, maybe even an hour and a half, but spend the rest of that time on the networking instead, because that is the highest rate of return. And then, by the way, for goals for your week, you might want to say to yourself, okay, look, I'd like to apply to 3 jobs per week, for example, but focus more on, hey, I want to talk to 5 new people every week, video chat so they can really make that connection. Set goals for networking too.
Great, thank you. Do you have any suggestions for handling age discrimination when communicating with recruiters? There's also another person who spoke about being unemployed for some time and dealing with age discrimination as well within 2 of their last 3 jobs. So what are your thoughts there in terms of managing that or dealing with that or addressing it?
Sure, great question. And it's unfortunate that this is a reality, but it is. Own your experience. So there's a certain part of me that says, like, just own it. Like, this is why you are valuable. You have this life experience and wisdom, not just, the tangible experience that you have. Keep in mind that if you are going to experience that discrimination, a prospective employer probably don't want to work there anyway. They're not going to be open-minded, not going to be open to, what's going on and what's important for you. This is where, too, you may want to look for, like on that website Flex Jobs that I said earlier, there are some places that actually really want, like whether it's remote workers, for example, who have a lot of experience but are looking for that flexible schedule and maybe don't need or want the benefits or whatever. So try to think creatively in that way. And when you're talking with recruiters, if there's a gap in experience or you're talking with them about age discrimination, just let them know up front, especially if it's an outside recruiter. So difference between internal recruiter, obviously, and external recruiter. With external recruiters, their job is to place you. They get money if you are placed. So you can be really honest with them about what you're concerned about and get their advice, pump them for information. If it's an internal recruiter, you don't want to necessarily bring all that stuff up, but talk with them about what the culture of the organization is and what they value so that you can speak to that and get away from the whole ageism issue. Okay, so hopefully that helps as a first start.
Yeah, great. So I have a question here and some comments. I've been unemployed for a long time. I network a lot. I have done a ton of networking meetings and phone calls, but nothing has ended up in a job. Nothing seems a bit fruitless and a waste of my time and their time. What is the key to making these networking meetings and calls lead to job opportunities?
Yeah. So a goal with your networking, everyone, is time over the phone with people and more people, because that's what's going to lead to a job opportunity eventually. You don't want the, hey, send me your resume and I'll keep it on file or I'll pass it on. The likelihood that they'll do that is probably low, just because we're busy and all of that. It's way too passive. So your ideal is time with them over the phone, an introduction to a couple of people that's via email where you're copied on it, or LinkedIn where you're copied on it as well, so that then you have that person's contact information and are in control of the follow-up. And your goal with each of those people is time on the phone with them. Video chat is best because then they get to know you. The cool thing about video chat is you get to see people's background and they might be dressed in something a little bit different. We're connecting with people on a more personal level in some ways these days because of that stuff. So do that as well. and ask them for that introduction, okay? And then with the networking, you want to keep in touch with people once a month, give or take. Send them an article that they might be interested in. Send them your updated resume. Check in with them, just how they're doing during this time. And also remember that you want to do the job boards too as part of the networking. So hopefully that gives you some additional things to do with the networking piece that will help you close the gap. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want. If you do it in a polite, professional way and are not like a pest or a stalker, you're going to be fine. Just handle it in the right way.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
One of our viewers asked a question about, they noticed in some job descriptions that a cover letter is mentioned as an optional thing to include.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels as though it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and they're not even sure if like the recruiter's actually reading them. So is it worth it? What are your thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to bring up, I'm just going to bring up this really quick slide here so that it's got my contact info. If we don't get to your question today, everyone, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer via email. So just wanted to bring that up here.
That's great.
So we still believe in cover letters. Eventually, maybe they'll go away completely permanently, but in our opinion, it's another opportunity for you to sell yourself, to get in front of them, to provide additional information. In some industries, they're not going to read them. Like technology, I talked with a recruiter several months ago, and she's like, with my tech people, I'm not going to read a cover letter. Well, that's that particular industry. If you're in marketing and communications or something else, especially where your writing is going to be relevant, absolutely. So we tell people err on the side of yes, include one, because you can put some really great content in there. And what if the person that you're applying to that day happens to really love cover letters? You need to have one.
Great. There are some questions here about being being unemployed for 10, maybe 20 years, and now having to go back into the workforce. What are some suggestions there?
Yeah, so this is a tough one. I'll give just kind of some broad strokes, and this is why I'm happy to do the strategy session with everybody too, because I realize, please know, I get that everyone's situation is unique, and sometimes it's hard. You know, the broad strokes answers I know won't always necessarily fit. But you want to at least come up with, okay, what have you been doing during that time? And we actually tell our clients on their resume to say what that is. If you took a sabbatical from work to stay at home with your kids, actually list that and put that on there so that there's not just this big gap, and talk about, okay, this is what I did during this time, just quick and easy. But you may want to, for that case or for this instance, you may want to have more of a functional resume instead of chronological, where you're listing your relevant experience first, and then you've got a quick list of, okay, chronologically, these are the jobs that I had, including, you know, sabbatical from work, took time off to take care of and be with family. So that's one way to kind of handle that. A lot of times we find people in this situation, their confidence is a little bit lower and they feel a little bit intimidated. One of our clients recently, she just had to get the networking ball rolling and start talking with people. Just get it going. Talk to a couple of people, you'll start to feel better, and it will continue to get easier and your confidence will increase. Hopefully that helps to start.
Yeah. There's some questions here about entrepreneurship in some ways, kind of transitioning from, you know, being in the workforce to maybe starting your own business, and then vice versa, like having your own business and then wanting to transition into a 9-to-5 job, for example.
Sure. So with all of these things, you want to, and this actually goes for everyone. One of the things we have people identify up front before they go on an interview or even applying for the job and they're tailoring their resume is identify and write down what the red flags might be from the employer. What might they be concerned about? You need to put yourself in their shoes. So if you were an entrepreneur and want to get back into the corporate world, they're going to be concerned if you're going to take direction, if you're going to play well in the sandbox, right? So you want to talk about being a team player and explain in your summary at the top why, and in your cover letter, good part for cover letter as well as LinkedIn, why you want to get back into the corporate world. You want to be able to have a bigger impact. You want to work within the structure of an organization, whatever it is, so that you can start to address what those possible red flags. And this goes kind of both ways. If you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, you really want to think about, do you have the right personality type and drive and motivation? Can you create structure for yourself so that you're successful? So I'm all for it. I think it's great, obviously, but it depends on the person. And we always have our clients really think about those elements first to make sure that that's the right fit before they do it.
Yeah, it looks like there's some questions here about LinkedIn, and someone's asking about there's a paid LinkedIn service and if it's beneficial.
Yep, premium.
Effective use of LinkedIn in general.
Yeah.
Tips there.
Here's what I would say about that. You're doing great fielding through all the questions, by the way. Rebecca, really impressed. LinkedIn Premium, I would suggest trying it for a month when you get a free month trial. Typically, I think they still do that. And try it out. It's very helpful for people that are going to really leverage and be on LinkedIn a lot, because then you can see who's viewing you. If you apply for a job, you can see if Joe from that job viewed your profile, and then you can reach out to Joe. So we do recommend it, but you have to use it, obviously. So I'd suggest trying it out, really playing with the features during that first month. It can help you with networking and reaching out to people that you might not otherwise know, what's going on. And then you might be able to get away with just that first free month or one more month after that, and boom, you're good to go. So that's what we tell people.
Great. So that looks like that's all the time we have today for questions. This was great. The model was excellent. I think it's a great visual to kind of think about your experiences and things that are important to you, and kind of thinking about your next steps and making different career decisions. Thank you so much, Hallie, for all your time today. I will be sending out the recording of this webinar to all those who registered, so be on the lookout for that. And then as Hallie mentioned, you can reach out to her for the PowerPoint slides, and if you have any additional questions, you may reach out to Hallie and she can answer those. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.